Hello everybody, my name's Althamir, welcome to my channel. So today we are going to be getting into an interview that Rich Lambert did with Gameshub.com, where he covers just basically 2024 and just basically like a lot of topics. So let's just dive right into it. Okay, so director creator Rich Lambert has been working on the evolving MMORPG in some cases since 2007. That's pretty much when I think that's when ZeniMax Online Studios was formed, and then this game was decided upon. Now, one thing that was right off the bat that I was actually pretty cool to find out, and I actually believe him when he says this, although he could be bullshitting too, is that he hasn't experienced burnout yet. You know, there are games where he's like, when it's done, screw this game. But with the ESO, he still plays it, and I do believe he does. I do believe he's one of the few devs that I feel actually do play the games. Now, we always kid around as players, or not kid around, but when we're angry, we say these devs don't play the game. And I feel like for a lot of them, that's probably true. I could be wrong. I'm not going to sit here and say, I don't think this dev doesn't play. Like, I've seen, you've seen Rich in game, when he used to live stream, and then you've heard stories of Finn playing the game. Like, he definitely plays the game. And then you've heard stories of um what's his name, Brian Wheeler, playing the game. Like, I do feel like those guys actually play. Like, I think like even like Gina Bruno kind of plays to a certain extent. I feel like, you know that's good to hear. I don't know. I don't think a lot of them, you know uh play all the time. But now, for those of you who don't know, Elder Scrolls Online first launched in 2014, and it was a subscription only game. Now, what that means is you actually had to pay a sub to play. They actually got rid of that when everything relaunched with um, 2015 with Tamriel Unlimited. Let's get into the next part of this. I don't. For ZeniMax Online Studios team, it was likely difficult to see what The Elder Scrolls Online would look like 10 years down the track, yet here we are. In 2014, the team behind the long running game will celebrate its 10th anniversary. The 10th anniversary is not only, and this is Rich's answer, the 10th anniversary is not only celebrating the game and the community, but the developers. We put a lot of hard work into this. We still have a bunch of people that have been working on this game since 2007, me included. That's a big part of it. We want to try to celebrate that as well. He goes on to say, for now, these celebrations have become under wraps, but Lambert teased that more news in November, which this is November, we're about in the middle, so kind of excited about that. But with a bunch of things planned for the game and its blockbuster anniversary. Now that's actually pretty exciting. I think that one thing I was kind of worried about the 10th year anniversary is they might not actually understand it's 10th year anniversary. It's like they do, but do they? And I feel like that they actually do understand that this is a big year. It's not every game gets the 10 years, and there's no, there's only one 10-year anniversary, so you have to go big or go home kind of thing. Like, you just have to. He goes into why the game's a success, basically. While it's difficult to encapsulate the full scope of why players continue to flock to Elder Scrolls Online year after year, Lambert puts this success down to design choices and the behaviors of its fan community. This is what Rich said. It's the way we built the world. Levels are important because they're power, but at the same time, they're not because you can go anywhere. Nothing is level gated. Then also, you can play with your friends, and it doesn't matter what level you are. You can be a brand new player, and they can be a max level. And that's very true. It's very, very true. And levels are power, but they're also not. Because I think what gets lost in this community is you don't really need a ton of DPS to do just the basic stuff in the game. Like you can go all the way up to like vet dungeons with just like, and this is on a 3 million, 6 million target dummy. You can probably get up to vet dungeons, not hard mode, but doing, I don't know, probably like 30k DPS. I think that's important to know. Okay, and this next part, you know, something Lambert particularly enjoys frequently heading to PAX and other community events, and he does. He goes everywhere. Sure, his love of the game connects with like-minded players. The reason you log in is to play with your friends, which is true. I really enjoy that aspect. I've always wanted to make a game or be part of a game that could foster that kind of community, and the community is great. I mean, I still play the game for my friends. It's such a fantastic game. I've moved on to plenty of different games in the last 10 years, and there's always one game that I always come back to, and that's this one. It's weird because I've rage quit this game at least 3 times. Then they go on to talk about um, experiences, dungeoneering, which I don't think that's a word, but I guess it is now. Monster battles, even if being carried. They talk about just there are always mysteries to solve, quirky NPCs to meet, and conspiracies to unravel. According to Lambert, these storylines are a core priority to the ZeniMax team, which has been consistently worked to create compelling plots to intrigue players and keep them coming back for more Elder Scrolls goodness. This is what Rich said about that. I'll just go this. Yeah. A lot of it comes together when we really start digging in on the story and how big the story is. We generally don't go into something and say, we're going to tell this over the course of 2 or 3 years. Generally, it's what is the story we want to tell, and then we start to work from there. And sometimes we have an idea how big we want it to be, but a lot of the times that kind of shakes out. So what we do is we look at what we've done in the past so that what we do in the future feels different. A lot of that comes down to one word that we talk about a lot that sets the mood and tone for the story. So for Elsewhere, the one word was revenge, which kind of feels that way. Necrom has been cosmic horror, which I mean doesn't really feel that way. I mean, it's very Lovecraftian, but cosmic horror, I don't know. And High Isle was Camelot, which yeah, I feel that. When you say the word out loud, you get this picture in your head. I did, and that's why I said cosmic horror doesn't really fit Necrom. It definitely, but anyway, um, yeah, and that helps the tone. That helps a lot in terms of making sure we're telling unique stories and going unique places. I mean, overall, the stories have been unique over the years, but also not at the same time. I mean, I feel like High Isle was a really good change of pace where it was more, like someone looking to just take over that Breton Isle, politically. It was a very political thing, and I feel like that was something that we kind of needed. This one so far, Necrom is kind of pointing more towards. It's like it could be world ending, but also when you get to the end of Necrom, you're like, I don't think it's really world ending. I think Hermaeus more just panicked. It's really interesting. I actually can't wait to see where the story goes. Okay, goes from there. The ZeniMax narrative team typically consisting of Lambert, a lead writer, a content director, and other contributors work on outlines fleshing out each expansion's themes. Not everything is planned out, but the narrative process usually involves creating a framework and then charting the major beats with this documentation then serving as a basis for other teams, basically. Now, next is talk about the lore. Now, we've had a few lore masters in this game. I think we've had 3. There was the original. I don't remember his name right now, but it's on the tip of my tongue. But then we had Lehman, and now we have Michael. Zenk. He's the current ESO lore master who keeps stories, characters, and mythology in line, with other teams within Bethesda currently working the Elder Scrolls 6. Zenki also helps to keep crossover and conflict minimal, which, I mean, can happen. I mean, there has been stories coming out of what the ESO devs have pitched to Bethesda going, hey, can we do this? Hey, can we do that? And Bethesda says, not really. So they have turned down things. Like, I think they wanted to touch on the Dwemer a little bit, and Bethesda kind of was like, no. And I think they also wanted to do something on Akavir or something like that. I think that was turned down. Don't quote me on that, though. Okay, ESO operates on a distant timeline, and while Lambert says the documentation isn't always complete, there are still plenty of touch points in millions of worlds on which to build around 8 million words from in-game books alone. Based on the localization of the game, between these lines, the ESO team is able to craft their own ideas, adding a vast library to the franchise. Okay, and this is basically what Lambert says about Michael's job, the new lore master. And Lambert also gets into Elder Scrolls 6 a little bit, I guess. Um, Michael's job is to make sure that the crazy that we want to come up with can fit and stay within the Elder Scrolls universe. A lot of the team are passionate about Elder Scrolls, but there's just so much to understand. So that's his job. He does a lot of the writing for us, but his main focus is just keeping things on the rails. If we have a concern, he's generally the guy that knows or at least can interpret how it could or should fit in the lore. As for Elder Scrolls 6, Lambert says that both teams are currently working closely because they're still set in the same world and the same universe, although they are very separate teams. And I think that's one thing to also keep in mind is Bethesda and the Elder Scrolls Online devs are separate teams. They do talk to one another, and I think this here, the Elder Scrolls 6 and whatever, I think that's why we're not getting Hammerfell. I think, this is just pure guess, but I think what they're waiting for, if 2024 happens to also not be Hammerfell, I think what they're waiting for is for Bethesda to at least move on to Elder Scrolls 6. I know that there have been videos from Bethesda in the past about them building the world, so I know that they've started. But I think they're waiting to see Hammerfell a little bit more fleshed out. That way, they can at least get the landscape right. Like what they did with Western Skyrim and Vardenfell and things that they wanted to make sure that it looked similar. They had the team that was building it go back and play the games and get familiarized with that area, and that's how they did it. And I think that's the easiest way to do it. But how do you build a game like Hammerfell, build an area that hasn't been built yet? So I think we probably won't see anything Hammerfell probably next year, but who knows? Yeah, I think they're waiting for Bethesda to start building Hammerfell, and then they're saying, okay, so that's the way this city's gonna look. Okay, so we'll go from there. Okay. All right, so this is talking about consistent change. Before grappling with evolving lore and keeping the action fresh for new and returning players. I'm not going to read all of this, guys. In terms of consistent change, Lambert says games are trying to find more ways to add social ties, more online games as a service. How do we get more players wanting to return to the game? I think that's a big one. Obviously, the other big one is monetization and how the market is changing in the traditional bricks and mortar to online. How does that work? How do you keep the lights on? That's a big question because it's changing and it's constantly changing, which is true. I mean, things have changed even in the last 10 years that ESO has been around. I mean, I've been in here since 2014, and I look back at the game that I first played. I don't think that game would have lasted in this market. As much as we all look at 2014 as like, with rose-colored glasses, that game barely lasted a year. They had to completely redo the game in order for it to survive. So, I mean, yeah. Okay, so this is what he also said. We focus a lot on continually updating the game, giving players reasons to want to come back and log in every day, unless you play PvP. We've been we've been live for 9 years. When you do the math, there's more than 4 major updates a year, which maybe you should tone down, man. Anyway, we try to do that every quarter, put something meaty in front of players and give them a reason to come back, whether it be a story, a content, or a dungeon, or quality of life improvements. Now, this is something that he talked about. I thought that was interesting. Um, I think that I've always said that the COVID and coronavirus pandemic, I think that that really changed ESO, and it really changed the performance plan, because they thought of that plan 2019, that 2020 was going to be performance, but then mid 2020 everything shut down. It screwed everything up, and this is kind of like what he talked about here. Even through the coronavirus pandemic, the team kept content consistent, providing new ways to connect through the game via developer live streams and shared online events. While shifting to work from home circumstances meant having to essentially relearn game development and communication skills. I think that's key right there. They had to relearn how to do the game, because from you got to figure from at least 2014 to 2020 they did things a certain way and it worked for them. And then they had this, okay, now we can really work on performance, and then boom, they had to work from home, and it just a complete 180. The process made the team more agile, more efficient, and better prepared to weather the storm in the future. This is what Rich said about it. He had We had to relearn how to be collaborative again. You'd be amazed at just how many problems in game development get solved by sitting around the water cooler. And he has actually said this many times. Or in the cafeteria eating lunch together, or just random 5-minute conversations that are very, very hard to have when you're all sitting at your desk. It took us a while to get there. If you watched very closely at our release cadence and the quality of those releases over COVID, you can kind of see that the quality went down a little bit. Yeah. And I'm glad that he's admitting that. I think that's a huge admit right there. There were more bugs, things were less stable. Again, I think it's honesty is really great. Then you could see that turn and get better. Necrom was the best chapter we've ever launched in terms of stability and the number of bugs. Hopefully, update 40, which just dropped last month, is going to do the same thing. Now, I think that's really important right here is, you know, honesty, open, them admitting that, hey, I mean, like, we did things that we didn't, we were still trying to do things one way, and it just went so poorly. And Necrom was probably the best chapter I think that they've dropped since Elsewhere, honestly. They said about riding the ship just in time for ESO's upcoming anniversary event. You know, um, this I think was pretty important right here, because there was somebody on Reddit and someone on the forums, kind of might have been the same person, talking about like they have to prepare, you know, they have to know what they're talking about. Like, how long out do they go? I mean, do they have to know what their plan is? Like, they were talking about, why doesn't the Zostev share more information with us? Why do we have to wait until basically like March to figure out like what the next year is going to hold, what that year's like? Why don't they just tell us? Like, and their big question was, do they even know? Like, how far out did they plan? And this kind of answered it. Per Lambert, the team is now working on next year's major chapter and the content for the years ahead. Years ahead. Firm plans have been put in place for quarterly content in the next years to come, with stories currently mapped out until at least 2026. So we're in 2023, almost 2024, and they have all the way up to about 2026 planned. There's lots and lots of stuff planned for the future. Fans can look forward to hearing more about the next steps for the ongoing game shortly. And again, we will be getting something in November apparently, so we are in the middle of November now. Maybe the stream team will start getting those. Sometimes they get mailed things like in the real mail. Maybe that will start to happen. I don't know. That'd be kind of cool. That's always kind of fun, honestly. But I think this kind of answers that is they have things planned in 2026, and it amplifies like you know to me. I forgot where I was going with this. I looked at the wall and saw a hole, and I was like, I gotta cover that hole. Sorry. Um, it proves that the change from year-long stories was the right move. Even though I do think year-long stories, as I said in other videos, they kind of got shafted a little bit. But I do believe it was the right move because we got down to the point where you only had really two races left for year-long stories. One was Redguard, who you kind of have to wait to see, wait till at least a chapter-sized area of the Elder Scrolls 6 is built for Hammerfell before you actually build it because you want it to be similar. And the other one's Bosmer, where the entirety of their province of Valenwood is in the base game. But the next problem with that is if you make, let's say 2024 was Bosmer year-long story, then you already know what 2025 was. It ruined the marketing. So the move on from it was a good way. But here's what also you got to think of. Putting my little tinfoil hat, conspiracy hat on for a minute there. That means that there was a time where, when Necrom was in development, that they knew where the story was going to go. It was originally probably a year-long story that had an ending somewhere. They had the typical Q4, story DLC. And you got to think, and it's like, I wonder if they would just turn that into next year's chapter. And it's like, man, like, huh? Because I feel like that the change from year-long story to this was kind of sudden. I do believe that. So it's like, and it makes me think, okay, a lot of people have been talking about the spoilers. I don't know if you want to, not really, but a lot of people have been talking about the upcoming crown crates that were data mined. And apparently, and I don't really believe this fully until they're actually out, but the next crates upcoming are called All-Maker crates. Now, why is that significant? Well, I look back at last year, Q4's crates were Stone Lore crates, and they were very, very, very druidic, which is what, Galen had just come out and kind of made sense, matched up with what they, with the year-long story. And I think that's, I think that's why people tied the All-Maker crates to Solstheim. Because I always wondered too, like, I'm like, yeah, like, but crown crates have little to do with where we go. But I'm like, wait, I mean, they do, but they don't. It's still a chance. It's still a flip of the coin. But, like, okay, I mean, Stone Lord crates were very, very druidic. Very, very, and Galen was the Q4 DLC that year. And at some point during the development of Necrom, it was a year-long story, and there was probably a Q4 at least area planned, and it might have been Solstheim, which is why there's All-Maker crates. So I kind of see how they match that up. Now, I don't believe that. I think that, Zos can go wherever the heck they want. They could even change it, whatever. But it's going to be interesting what 2024 holds. I'm excited. I really like this interview. One of the, beyond just the fact that I like doing this for fun, one of the reasons why I did start this channel was because I liked sharing information. When I get bored a lot with my job, and I end up searching the internet for just random things, and sometimes I land on interviews with the developers, and it's not like hard to find these things. You just type in like ESO 2024 and you'll probably run into a few. But a lot of these things, I think ZOS needs to promote this stuff. Like, I didn't know this interview happened. Did anyone know this interview happened? I know that there was something else at PAX Australia that Rich did an interview for. It's like they should promote this stuff more, these interviews more, because a lot of us want to know. So, and that's one of the reasons why I started this channel, was because, I tend to find these things, whether it's accidental or, you know, on purpose, and not a lot of people know. And I love sharing that information with you guys, because I think it's important. Maybe people didn't know that this game development started basically in 2007. And you look at the issues we're having in Cyrodiil, and you have to really think, well, when was Cyrodiil really built? Cyrodiil, the PvP zone, was probably built in 2011. Oh my god, man, how long ago was that? So, yeah. So I'm excited for 2024. I can't wait to see where it goes. I really liked, the honesty in this, that, you also got some insight right here on how kind of they do things, and how they create stories. I think that was pretty interesting. Um, so let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Are you excited about the next year, 2024? I mean, they have things planned out for 2026, so that's kind of awesome, And don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.